we'll talk a little about why you do 30 days and just the logistics behind it. But before going there, what are some additional costs that you need to account for compared to someone who's doing a 12-month lease?
Sure, absolutely. And I like this question because it's something that, if you have partners on a project and or investors and you're doing a mini syndication, what's really important is to coach the partners and make sure they know that the refi, the cash out, the immediate kind of return of some capital is going to be very, very different, and you shouldn't kind of be judged by or compared to other kind of GPs or operators that they invest in, because furniture, absolutely. So 8,000 for a 1-bedroom, but if you're a 12-month operator, you're not going to necessarily need to put keypad locks on all of them. And so the basic keypad lock is $50. But if you really want to make it an efficient system, you have to buy the $200 one, the one that links to a smart home system where you can change the code. There's another thing. So locks. Anything from, there's a lot of different things we do construction wise that cost a little more just to make the place more durable, but also more manageable. So a lot of things with electric in the stairwells, because you're going to need to have wireless routers, you're going to have the modems, you're going to need temperature sensors, you need more electrical on the exterior of buildings, and because you need your cameras, you need to make sure that lawn care and snow care or snow removal came. And then you're going to want like a stocked supply room, right? You're not going to want to just, it's 8,000 and then it's done. You need to have backups for a lot of stuff. So, we have central air in a lot of our units, but we have backup, say for a 6 unit, we'll have 2 backup window AC units, because we know that maybe one furnace goes down or one condenser goes down. They're going to need some sort of cooling, and same thing with space heaters, backup microwave. I mean, you want to have backups there so that you could direct the residents to, here's an interim solution, we'll get it fixed, but just so you're not really suffering for those 2 days until we can get it fixed.
I think that's a good tip for anybody with a multifamily to have those type of backups, because there's nothing more aggravating to a tenant, and nothing more, especially when it comes to cold. There's a lot of risk around that with the city and the fines, and they got to call 911. So to have space heaters hand, or we started using, because we do scattered for the most part, so it's harder you can't put one at all 1,200 units, but we just simply send messenger services with the units that we have stored at our office. So it's kind of a little hack, so we don't got to pay someone to run over there.
Smart.
That's good. One more thing on this. Let's talk about some of the monthly bills. Like, do you have to provide internet, Netflix? You're paying the utilities, because I see a lot of times like, hey, the long-term rent is whatever, $1,200 a month. I can double that here, but your profit's not going to double. It still might be a better solution, but there are other expenses that you need to account for. I just want to make sure everyone is aware of those so they can underwrite appropriately.
Absolutely. Utilities they can get out of control, right? And so, we've tried to find ways on how, especially because, some of the residents will stay for 3-4 months. It's just, no competition is passing through those costs. And so it's something that you do need to absorb. But for sure, internet, probably the number one utility that you need to provide. When you have an entire building operating that way, you can kind of minimize that cost especially if you have smaller units, you might only need 2 for every 6 units with a mesh network. That's kind of what we do. But it's interesting that you say, I think you mentioned just the amount of for heating and cooling is something that it's an obstacle that we've just experienced, particularly this year, given the rise in remote workers. So, it's fine. We absolutely allow the ability for, the digital nomad crowd and people to work out of the place, but that really increases the utility costs. And there's not really a way to be able to say you have to pay a little more because you're going to be in the space and blasting the AC 16 hours or 24 hours a day, versus if it were a traveling nurse where they're only home or in the apartment for 12 hours a day. You can limit, there's the thermostat, smart thermostats have X limit that you can do. It's just never received well. We've tried it, and ultimately we want the residents to be happy and to be able to feel like it is their apartment, and all those controls don't really mesh well with that.